Yes, another weekend is upon us, and you know what that means. Welcome, one and all. I am Michael Rogers, and this is the MAGA fight. Thank you for joining me today. Real quick, just before we get started, can we have a brief conversation? June is here. The weather's looking lovely, and Father's Day is a couple weeks away. And with that, the ads have already started, and every single one is exactly the same as every year. It's all lawnmowers and hedge trimmers, and get dad that trimmer he'll need to keep the hedgerow looking fresh, maybe a nice new lawnmower. And then, of course, it's accompanied with all the reviews. "Well, my dad had a still, and now I have a still. I finally got one. 5 stars." You realize, of course, that this is the equivalent of advertising vacuum cleaners for Mother's Day. But I digress. "Oh, my mother had a Kirby, and now I have a Kirby. 5 out of 5 stars. I've always wanted one. Thanks, fam. Now I can keep that living room carpet looking immaculate." Oh, all in good fun, though. We love it. Also, speaking of it being June, aliens. So the government's been doing this slow burn last couple months. Started with them releasing, some footage from some Navy pilots who had seen or encountered UFOs, and they were following them and commentating on them and all that good stuff. And when they released that, they essentially said, "Okay, we're officially admitting that yes, there are UFOs. Yes, we encounter them, and we don't really know what they are. We're going to do an investigation. There's a report expected out later this month." Now, a lot of people have been speculating, is the government finally going to announce that there are little green men? Are they from God knows where, and this and that? Well, a couple little tidbits now are starting to leak out, and what it looks like is more like that they're just going to announce, that yes, there's these technologies, but they're earthbound. We don't really know who they are yet. It looks like maybe something like that, which is not surprising at all to me. I know I was talking to Katie about this when it came up last month. For any new listeners or viewers who may not know, I'm a big history buff. I love history, and also space, the cosmos, natural sciences, all that good stuff. Those have always been two of my biggest interests, and I'm a big fan of Ancient Aliens, the series. Been watching it for quite a few years now, and so this is right up my alley. So I was talking to Katie last month when this started coming out, and for any new listeners or viewers, she's my better half. She was with me like episodes 1 through 5. I think she guest hosted with me. So if you're interested, you can check those out, and then you'll know who she is. But so this is right up my alleyway, but I was talking to her, getting back on track here, and I was saying that, look, I don't see any scenario where the government's going to admit to extraterrestrial life or even just acknowledge extraterrestrial life, because that'll just cop things up here on Earth too much. And I don't know. I mean, we saw how people handled COVID, so I mean they can't even handle a flu. I highly doubt they can handle aliens. So I think the government might be right on that one. Credit where credit is due, I suppose. But what I was telling her was that, in my opinion, what I thought was that they would announce it as a technology, either one that they're not sure which government it's from, But I don't see that because we're America and image is everything. And we're not going to want to say that, oh, here's a super advanced technology, but, we don't know where it comes from. I think they're going to announce it's ours. Maybe there's some Russian ones. Maybe there's some Chinese ones, stuff like that. I think they're going to announce that it's a earthbound technology, probably one that the mass population just wasn't aware of up until now. It's probably been top secret, all that good stuff. However, to my mind, all that does is raise more questions because, I mean, UFOs have been prevalent in the American conversation since at least Roswell in 47. And long before that, look, every civilization has always had, whether it's in the form of their gods or just myths and legends and lore, has always had beings that come from off planet, come down from the sky, from space. They're always more advanced. They're always far superior. They teach us things, yada 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 yada. But this has been consistent throughout all of civilized human history, at least. And I mean, even Native Americans had star people, and so it's very prevalent. And the fact that it occurs across all cultures and across all times, I always found fascinating. So for them to come up and say, actually, it's our technology, we were just working on it for a while, and so you guys can stop questioning, all the lights and stuff you always see. It is us. Yes, we were building it at Area 51, where we do all our secret flying projects and all that. So I think it's gonna be right up along those lines, but that's just where I see it going. But I'm very interested to see what actually happens. Of course, you can always let me know your thoughts. You can keep in touch with me on social media at mrogers87 on both Clout Hub and Parler. I am also getting back onto Twitter just for the sole fact that that's still where the majority of people are. That's still where the majority of conversations happen. And look, you gotta be in it to win it. And but I the the issue is when it comes to big tech censorship and all that stuff, you have the same issues with Twitter as you do with I will learn to talk one of these days, as you do with YouTube. And that's why, you know, our my strategy has always been is to just be on as many different platforms as possible. That way you don't have to worry, if Twitter takes you down or if YouTube takes me down or anybody else, you don't have to worry about it because I'll still have the other platforms and especially those right-leaning or more free platforms like Clout Hub, like Parler. Although I really have to say that Parler is all but dead. I don't know about anybody else. I don't know about any of you that may use Parler. Maybe you can get in touch with me and let me know, but it's my experience on there for at least the last month, 2 months is it's just absolutely dead. The feed barely scrolls down at all, and then it just comes to an abrupt stop. There's maybe one or two posters on there that I even see in my feed. It's just all one guy or two people. Um, there's never any traction on anything. And actually, even back when Parler was more prevalent, I found that to be the case. One of the big things that surprised me is I had been on Parler for a decent amount of time and had been decently prevalent on there as far as how much I posted and how often I was on and stuff like that. And I got, like a measly 250 followers, I think, is about what I got now on there and what I had at the time. And then Clout Hub came out, the big tech started happening, everything started crashing, people scattered out looking for other platforms and secondary platforms. And that's when I came across Clout Hub, signed up on there, and right away I had 0 followers, zero anything, and right off the bat, day one, my posts would get more attention and more traction, so to speak, than they did on Parlor. So I mean, right off the bat. But now, yeah, it's just become like this decrepit desert. Um, I don't know. It looks like Parlor is barely on life support. I don't know. But the point of the matter is, I am getting back on Twitter. I've just set up the rough account, but the name will be the same. It'll be, at M Rogers or Michael Rogers. You can search for either one. Stay in touch with me on there. Feel free to send a private message or whatever the case may be. For Rumble and YouTube viewers, always feel free to leave a comment. I do read them. And so aliens, we'll find out later this month. And our first actual story for the day, fairly interesting. I find it hilarious. I have an article here from The Hill by Joseph Coy, I believe Choi. Of course, sorry if I butcher it. I'm never going to be good at names, especially the weird ones. And so this is titled Steven Seagal Joins Russian Pro-Kremlin Party. Actor and martial artist Steven Seagal, who has long been an admirer of Russian President Vladimir Putin, has joined a pro-Kremlin party. Reuters reports that Just Russia Patriots for Truth announced in a video on Saturday that Seagal, 69, who has held Russian citizenship since 2016, had received party membership. The party was created earlier this year when the three pro-Putin leftist parties formed into one. Seagal called for a crackdown on businesses that harm the environment in his welcome speech, Reuters report. Quote, without being able to arrest people, when we just find them, they are probably making more money of the production of the things that are defiling the environment, Seagal said. Reuters notes that the actor was granted Russian citizenship by Putin, who is a fan of martial arts. So we'll just leave it there. There's more, but it's not necessary. We get the point. Steven Seagal, who I believe has dual citizenship, is the case in both America and Russia. As the article said, he's had the Russian citizenship since like 2016. But, he's a big fan of Putin. Putin's a big fan of martial arts, which, I mean, that's a very loose connection to connect Steven Seagal to martial arts. But, I mean, there are plenty of legit guys. For example, Chuck Norris. He had multiple championships in kickboxing and other stuff, and he was one of the few TV stars who was actually like legit in martial arts and competed and those things. So I just find that hilarious. But this to me just is like a little example of a greater trend in America, where it seems like half or more of the country's allegiance is to a foreign country. It's all, whether it's Russia, for the most part, it seems to be China, especially in academia, tech, and sports. Definitely China. But it just seems like, the left is loyal to any country but America. And it's sad to see. But congrats, Steven Seagal, I guess, and good riddance, man. Enjoy Russia. Governor Ron DeSantis. Let's talk about him a little bit next. He was in the news this past week for banning trans women from entering girls' school sports. And I think that's fantastic. I think it's exactly what needs to be done. It's a great step to ensure equality in sports. This has been a big problem, especially the last couple months. And you know, it's stupid to think that a guy can just maybe take some estrogen and put on a dress and then say that it's fair for him to join a women's sports team and just, you know, run all over them and shatter all their records. And it's disgusting, actually. To me, I find it disgusting, and I'm glad that at least some people have the common sense and the fortitude, like Governor Ron DeSantis, to take these necessary steps, even though he's going to receive all the backlash and be called all the bad names. And, oh, I know he's so sexist and he's transphobic. And, you know, let them yell themselves out. That's what I say. He's doing the right thing. Credit where credit is due. Now, speaking more broadly on Governor Ron DeSantis, I have been thinking recently, and I'm going to say something that's probably going to be a little controversial. I don't know. Obviously, the 2024 election, everybody's already talking about it. The possibilities, who's going to run. Ron DeSantis' name is right up there at the top, right with Trump's. I would say that it's probably Trump and Ron DeSantis are the top two names that you hear for president on the Republican side of things. And but the Republican Party as a whole has pretty much already stated that, look, because it's very clear, Trump is still the head of the Republican Party. And they've said that if he runs, they'll pretty much clear out the way and the nomination's his. And which is great. I mean, Donald Trump is the greatest president of my lifetime, hands down. He single-handedly gave me faith that the system could actually be something. He's the reason I got into politics. Him and all the hatred against him is why I got into politics. And that, coupled with seeing the left just violently move towards communism and socialism. Well, first, they say socialism because socialism is just soft communism. But, so at first they said socialism, but they mean communism. Let's not get that twisted. But what I've been thinking is, I don't know. Look, as great of a president as Donald Trump was, and all the good things that he did, promises made, promises kept, and I have been a starch Trump supporter the entire time. But that last year of his presidency, 2020, gave me a lot of concern. I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all the whole year. And it's what cost him the presidency. Hands down, no doubt. But what I didn't like about 2020 was the fact that, for one, he seemed to almost be trying to become part of the bureaucracy, part of that DC swamp that he had argued about draining for, the 3 years prior. And I understand that. COVID was going on, and that many saw it as a time where, the country could come together and unify against a larger threat. All good stuff. But that wasn't the case. And to me, it almost looked like he was trying to become part of that bureaucracy and that DC deep state, almost like almost like those around him had maybe convinced him that if he did the right things, then everybody would get along and things would run smoothly, which of course never happened. And they just attacked him just as hard every single day, all along throughout the entire year. And I don't know. And then going along with the shutdowns, going along with the stimuluses, which I was arguing with from the very first one, because anybody that pays attention to economics, and that's like rule number one, like printing money equals inflation every single time. There's no way around it. And when you're doing bills that large in those trillions of dollars with the national debt that we already have, that's just raw printing. That's it. And we're starting to see that now. I mean, how's your grocery bill doing? How's your gas prices doing? The energy prices are going to be going up, and it's affecting all kinds of things. Inflation is starting to hit, and you're going to start paying very heavily for all that quote unquote free government money that everybody wanted so badly. And I understand people were going through hard times, and I understand the businesses were closing, but government is never the answer. Government is the problem. So we've already seen and heard of the massive fraud that happened with the PPE loans, and just the excessive waste. And of course, a lot of that government money always goes to their special interests and their groups. And it was just bad ideas all around throughout all of 2020, and Trump went along with them. And I understand the Federalist argument that he was leaving it up to the states, which I think was a good idea, and he did at first argue against the lockdowns, saying that the treatment can't be worse than the sickness, or whatever that was that he was going around saying at the time. But I don't know. I didn't see Trump as I had seen him the 3 previous years before that. I saw him just kind of going along with things, being part of the bureaucracy, you know, getting Dr. Fauci up there, doing the things every day. Basically, you could see him doing what he was being advised to do by the piss poor advisors that were around him. And I understand the reasons, but I don't know. It gave me concern. And the fact that that's where we left off, that's the last we've seen of him, because that cost him the election, or at least made it close enough to, where the fraud could become a factor, because we all know that the 2020 election was a shit show, riddled with fraud. He may have even won the election still, but had he not made those mistakes of 2020, I don't think it would have been close enough for even that level of fraud to have taken the election from him. So, all of that being said, hypothetical situation I've been thinking of lately: what happens if hypothetically we end up with Ron DeSantis versus Trump? What if they both run? What if DeSantis doesn't just get out of the race? Because, and look, I've said previously on this podcast, and I still believe it, that I don't think Trump's going to run in 2024. I don't think he wants to run in 2024. I think that, he did what he needed to do when he needed to do it. I think that he worked his ass off harder than maybe any other president I've seen. And on top of that, all of the attacks and all of the problems that he faced while he was doing it, being stabbed in the back and leaked and everything else, just all of that mess of those 4 years, because that's what a fight looks like. It looks messy. and he was definitely a fighter, and that's exactly what we needed when we needed it. He was the right guy at the right time. But if we end up with Ron DeSantis versus Trump in 2024, I think I might go Ron DeSantis. I think I might have to vote for Ron DeSantis 2024, even in a hypothetical scenario where Trump essentially runs against him, or where Ron DeSantis is running against Trump, or they're both running, I should say, for the primary. I think I got to go Ron DeSantis. I think he has more than proven himself. I think that, I think that he is the right guy at the right time for 2024. Of course, we still have a good 3 years at least till we even get to the 2024 election. A lot can happen between now and then. I don't subscribe to hero worship, especially when it comes to politicians and whatnot, because they can be doing great today, and then tomorrow they can be like a whole new person that you never saw before, and could be completely in line with the Democrats. They could be Donald Trump of 2017 today, and then tomorrow be Donald Trump of 2020, is what I'm trying to say. So there's still, but as things look right now, that's where my thinking's at. I think Ron DeSantis is the top guy. I think he gets me my vote in that hypothetical scenario. But let me know what you think. I'm always interested to know. I'm always interested to have that conversation. Um, so let me know what you think. Moving on from that, though, a Celtics fan. I don't know how many people saw this over the last week. A Celtics fan was charged after throwing half of a water bottle at, I believe, one of the players on the opposing team. So his name is Cole Buckley, 21. He threw a half-filled water bottle at one of the players. Now here's where things get weird. They removed him, of course. They arrested him. Okay, maybe. But they charged him with assault and battery with a deadly weapon for a half-filled water bottle, plastic water bottle. Assault and battery with a deadly weapon. That that is a gross overcharge. I I don't know. I think maybe just because it's a privileged sports player or whatever, but we have seen far worse. So of course, in this case, they're gonna charge. That's a felony level assault with a deadly weapon. That means he loses his right to vote. That means he loses his right to own firearms. That means he loses his right to defend himself and his family, on top of whatever jail time and fines he may do for throwing a half-filled water bottle at a sports player. To me that is egregious and sickening. That's the kind of overcharging that, frankly, I don't know. I don't like it. I don't want to see it. That's disgusting, especially when we have leftist rioters still currently who multiple times they were freezing bottles of water to throw filled frozen water bottles at people, which essentially is like throwing a brick at somebody. Now that can actually cause damage. That can actually seriously hurt somebody. And on top of that, not only did they have the frozen water bottles, but they had the actual bricks, not to mention the destroying of buildings, the setting of fires, the burning, the looting, the pillaging, and all that we saw. None of that got charged, though. They let those people go, because they're out there fighting for civil rights and communism. So they're doing the Democrats' work, so we're not going to charge them. But This guy, how dare he throw half a bottle of water at a privileged sports star? How dare he? That's it. Lock him up. Throw away the key. Take away all his rights. Now, was that a dumb decision? Yes. Should he have been removed? Yes. Should he have been arrested? Maybe. Definitely a fine or something. I mean, there has to be law and order. People can't just behave like animals when they're out in public, or at least they didn't used to be able to. So, I don't know. Just something interesting I saw this last week. Wanted to bring it up. It blew my mind, really. But it shouldn't, because we continue to see these things over and over and over again. They become more and more prevalent. And what are you going to do, though? Now, getting into one of the actual bigger stories from the past week, Biden went and did a speech in Tulsa to, I guess, commemorate the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa massacre. And I have to admit, I just now found out about this, which is surprising to me with as much history content as I read and listen to and watch and take in. And this is something that had flown completely under my radar. I just learned about it not too long ago, and it's horrific. It is definitely a dark day in American history, no doubt about that. However, for Biden to go and do this speech in Tulsa on a topic that I would be safe to say probably most people don't know about, or are just learning about, like myself. All that's gonna do is exactly what they intended to do, which is to stir up those feelings of hatred and resentment, and make people feel oppressed, put that further divide in between the races. I don't see the point. I don't see the reasoning. I mean, I do, but I don't know. But a couple interesting moments in that speech, a couple clips I got here. The first one, he's talking about black entrepreneurs. Take a look at this.
Young black entrepreneurs are just as capable of succeeding given the chance as white entrepreneurs are. But they don't have lawyers, they don't have accountants, but they have great ideas.
So there you see it. Black entrepreneurs, they're just as good as white entrepreneurs, but, they don't have lawyers. They don't have accountants. And, I mean, I'm looking around here. I'm looking around. I don't see an accountant. I don't see a lawyer. Was I supposed to get one with this podcast? Was it? I don't know. Apparently, when white people start businesses, they get lawyers and accountants, and can easily afford them, no problem, because it's not like stuff is expensive, and there's no such thing as a poor white person, apparently. But although I would beg to differ, that's for damn sure. But then of course, he can't wait to bring up Charlottesville every time he gets a chance, and this was a perfect occasion, so it was no different. Take a listen to this.
Just close your eyes and remember what you saw in Charlottesville 4 years ago on television. Neo-Nazis, white supremacists, the KKK coming out of those fields at night, Virginia, with lighted torches, the veins bulging on as they were screaming. Remember, just close your eyes and picture what it was. Well, Mother Fletcher said when she saw the insurrection at the Capitol on January the 9th, it broke her heart. A mob of violent white extremists, thugs, reminded her of what happened here in Greenwood 100 years ago.
there you have it, folks. Just look back to Charlottesville, and it's funny. He always says the exact same thing. He always says, "I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to picture. Just remember what you saw that day in Charlottesville, with those neo Nazis with their torches ablaze and their veins bulging as they came out in the name of hate." So, um, yeah, that's one thing I remember. I also remember a year plus of cities being looted, burned, pillaged, businesses being destroyed, people being assaulted, buildings being set alight while their veins bulged. Um, but Biden never talks about that. I wonder why. Never once brings it up. But, he's so quick to harp back to Charlottesville. And, of course, he's so quick, as every Democrat is, to harp back to January 6th. And he wasn't about to miss that opportunity either. And that's what struck me about that clip, was the way that he then tied that to January 6th and all Trump supporters. And essentially like all Republicans. So essentially, he used that to tie them together and essentially just say that, we're all white supremacists, we're all, domestic terrorists, yada, yada, yada. But never once a mention of the left, never once a mention of multiple cities burning, of autonomous zones, which is a far larger story. I mean, one is one small group of people on two separate days, two separate events. Buildings were not burned in either. Only one person was killed in January 6th, and that was Ashley Babbitt, an unarmed Trump supporter, regardless of how much they try to tell you that others died as a result of that day, like the couple officers or whatever. They didn't. They didn't. And only one person died directly in January 6th, and that was Ashley Babbitt, an unarmed Trump supporter. And, of course, he ties it off with this beautiful cherry on top.
As I said in my address to the joint session of Congress, according to the intelligence community, terrorism from white supremacy is the most lethal threat to the homeland today. Not ISIS, not Al-Qaeda, white supremacists. That's not me. That's the intelligence community under both Trump and under my administration.
And there it is, what we've all been screaming from the hilltops for I don't even know how long now. We've been trying to tell them. I'm glad they finally get it. That white supremacy is the biggest problem this country faces, hands down. Not Al-Qaeda, not Hamas, not China, not anything else. White supremacy. That's the biggest threat to this country right now in 2021. I would argue, however, from my point of view, I think millions of Americans' point of view, I would argue that communism is in fact the biggest threat that America faces today in 2021. Whether that is in the form of China as our biggest rival and who has stated as much as wanting to overtake us and become the top superpower on the planet. Whether it's the communists here in America that are trying to overtake our government and turn America into a communist country. We are facing communism coming from all sides here, and we are surrounded, we are infiltrated. Now it's coming from the inside out and from the outside in, and we are not sitting pretty right now. We are not in a good place. It is a huge threat. I think that it's actually going to be the downfall of America. I don't know if we come back from this. It's going to take a lot more people becoming politically active, or it's going to take a lot. I don't know. And I don't know if American citizen. I don't know. I don't know if, as a country, I don't know if we have it in us now, but we will see going forward. And I know that there is at least 70 plus million Americans who do have it in them and who do want to stop that. And that gives me hope. And hope is, you know, enough to keep you going. So the other big story from this past week, and actually the biggest story from this past week, Fauci's emails. So BuzzFeed did a Freedom of Information and got Fauci's emails released, like 3,000 plus emails, I believe is what BuzzFeed got. You can look those up right on BuzzFeed. They have the article. They highlight a couple of what they saw as uh, the top like most relevant emails, and then down at the bottom they have a little window there where you can search through all 3,000 plus emails. I have been going through them. Of course, I haven't read all 3,000. That's ridiculous. That takes an incredible amount of time, especially for one person on top of everything else that you have to do. And but I've gone through a nice handful of them, maybe like 50 to 75, something like that. And a lot of them are boring nothing burgers. A couple of them are very interesting. He seems to be, there's at least a couple where he's talking back and forth with um, his Chinese co-scientists, I suppose. There's an email I saw where and the news covered this one too, where he's talking about the possibility of COVID being man-made when you look really closely at it, and a bunch of interesting stuff. I'm sure that is going to continue to be a story throughout the next week. Many people are going to continue going through all these emails, and a lot of the media, especially right-wing media, well, only right-wing media, of course, because left-wing, they're not going to talk about it. They're going to cover for them. But the right-wing media and Republicans in general, they've been touting this as a huge scandal, and now they're calling for an investigation and all that. An investigation, I'm completely behind that. I think we should have done that a long time ago, and especially an investigation into the origins of COVID and where it actually came from. Um, but scandal, I don't know. I don't know if I would per se call it a scandal. To me, and what I've seen of these emails, all it really did was just reinforce what I already thought, which was that Fauci is a bureaucrat and he'll say and do whatever he needs to in the interest of himself and that bureaucracy. That's what he's shown. That's what his actions have shown, and that's what he's done throughout this entire event. That's why, one day he comes out in the beginning and he says that nobody should be wearing masks, even though privately he did think people should be wearing masks, but he didn't want people to go buy up masks and then there to be a problem with the professionals, getting PPE and masks. So he lied and said that he didn't think anybody should be wearing masks in the interest of the bureaucracy. And, just numerous times he's flip-flopped back and forth, especially on vaccines. He's also got, some conflicts of interest. He's got money in the vaccines. He's got, this is where he makes his living. So, a bureaucratic weasel. That's what I thought him to be, and that's what these emails so far have just verified to me. And, of course, what we already thought, that he's going to carry China's water. What he likes to say is he likes to try to separate the scientists from the government. But, that's just being dishonest, because anybody that understands how communism works knows that it's not possible to separate out the government and just talk about the scientists, because they're one and the same. The government is the end all be all in China. And coincidentally, in many ways, here in America too, as we talked about in previous episodes when we talked about how Hollywood changes their movies based on what China says. And, sports players like LeBron James who trash their own country and threaten police officers every day on social media. But China just says one word to them, and people like him and John Cena will drop to their knees and apologize and do whatever they need to do to be compliant to communists. So it's just all a continuance of the larger picture that we've seen going. And Fauci, he's a bureaucrat. He's gonna do what bureaucrats do, and that's what I see in these emails. Another couple, real quick though, before we move on. Um, Another interesting I did see with his emails is, remember back when Trump was president, back in early mid 2020, um, the left was almost talking to Fauci as though, like, blink twice if you're being held hostage. They're saying, are you being muzzled? Are you not being allowed to say things? Are you actually telling us the truth? Are you being told what to say? Blah, 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 blah. And Fauci said, no, of course I'm not being muzzled. And then after Biden became president, then he started talking as though, oh, well, now I can speak freely. Of course I didn't want to say anything that might upset Trump, or I didn't want to say anything, that might get me fired or, have an actual effect on me. But now I can say whatever I want, because what I want is exactly what the left wants me to say. So I'm going to say that now. And but there was quite a handful of emails that were him almost seeming to argue or yell or even get angry with the people that he was sending emails to. There was numerous emails sent to people saying, stop saying that I'm being muzzled. I am not being muzzled. Stop hinting at it. Stop talking about it. Stop using this. I am not being muzzled. I speak my own free will. I say what I want to say. I say the truth. I say the facts as I see them. And I thought that was pretty interesting, especially in contrast with how he's been behaving with lately, which is to almost go along with that old narrative now that he's part of a friendlier administration, shall we say. Jumping into the origins of COVID here, speaking of which, the Wuhan lab theory is, you're allowed to talk about it now, folks. It is finally okay for you to talk about the Wuhan lab theory. It is, after people on the right were labeled as conspiracy theories for the past year or more, conspiracy theorists. I swear to God, one of these days I am going to learn to talk fluently. Let me just adjust my tie here. All right. But we were called conspiracy theorists. The posts were shut down and banned and removed from social media. It was against policy. You can't say that. It didn't come from a lab, even though there's that level 4 lab right at the epicenter of where the first cases happened. Nothing to see here. Of course, naturally, it came from some bats that were in hibernation at the time, over 1,000 miles away from Wuhan, or it came from a wet market, or some weird stuff like that. But whatever the case, it definitely didn't come from the level 4 bio lab at the epicenter of the outbreak. And but now it's okay. Now you can entertain that theory. Now you can, well, is it possible that it came out of a lab? Now maybe you can make a post about it and it won't get removed. But I think, look, I I think that it's almost it's comical that now we would be returning to the Wuhan lab theory, because there is no other theory. Again, this stuff is always from the left, who says things like follow the science, Or you have the dumbass people walking around, well, I listen to science and I listen to scientists. I listen to doctors. And I don't know about you, but I'm going to keep listening to the scientists and I'm going to keep listening to the doctors because they're the people that actually know. Well, they should be. They should be. Can't argue with that logic, but that's not the case because as we see, all it took was a little bit of common sense to think maybe this Wuhan lab should be investigated. Maybe that's where it came from. On top of, we should also look at China because, you know, they stopped domestic flights, but they didn't stop international flights. So outbreak happened in Wuhan. They stopped domestic flights in and out of Wuhan, but they didn't stop international flights when the rest of the world was doing exactly the opposite. Most of the rest of the world, the other countries, as the outbreak began to spread, started limiting international flights and then afterwards maybe constricting more on their domestic flights. But China, the exact opposite. They're the only ones, to my knowledge, that stopped domestic flights while keeping international flights at full throttle. And for the left to not find that curious, for the left to not want to look into that, I believe is very dishonest. And, you know, they're just playing second fiddle to their overlords, I guess. So, in summary, though, I mean, that's pretty much it. It was a short week due to the holiday and short week. Not a whole lot going on. As you can see, Fauci's emails were the biggest news story of the week. So clearly not a lot going on last week. And so we'll leave it there for this week. Again, before we end, I just want to thank everybody sincerely from the bottom of my heart who listens to this podcast, who watches the videos. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for tuning in every week. Thank you for supporting this shitty little show that I'm trying to build up and get better at. I appreciate it so much. I can't even convey into words what it means to me that people are supporting this. And I just appreciate it. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments and on social media. As I've stated before, I am going to get a website up and going for the podcast, emails, and all that good stuff to come in the future. Big plans. Might be a slow burn getting there. Number one is just me working on getting better at communicating and talking and all that good stuff. I've never been a big talker, so the choice to do a podcast is very interesting when talking is one of your lowest qualities. But thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for tuning in each week. To the new listeners and viewers and to the older ones, thank you so much. Again, at mrogers87 on social media. And the best thing you can do is try to bring somebody new to the podcast. Try to get it out there. Help me spread it out. I don't do advertising. Don't and can't do advertising. So, you know, word of mouth and that good stuff is the only way this podcast gets out. So thank you guys so much for that. And we'll do it again next week. Thank you.